Hey everybody, I told you I'd make a video on counterpoints or counterarguments. They're synonyms, they mean the same thing. This is that second to last body paragraph of your essay where you have the opportunity to address the concerns of people who disagree with you. Remember, you're not going to be writing a pro-con paper, meaning you're not having 2 pages for your side and 2 pages for theirs. Your argumentative or persuasive essay is you taking on your topic and you arguing to the best of your ability through quality research and organization, that your argument has weight, that it's actionable. But there are often people who disagree with those points of view, and we want to address them, and we want to come across as seasoned, as good researchers, as reasonable. And that's where the counterpoint paragraph comes in. So in a traditional Aristotelian essay, at least the ones that I teach, these are the second to last paragraphs of your essay, right before the conclusion. So the way to think about this is you've done some research, you found data, and this is an example of a student paper where the student was writing about not allowing creationism in the classroom. They wanted to argue against the incorporation of teaching the Bible in a science class. Okay, so the shape of a counterpoint paragraph is this. There's 3 parts to it. It doesn't mean there's 3 sentences, but there are 3 sections. The first section is just 1 sentence. It's a topic sentence, and it's a statement of truth from the opposing side. We don't start off attacking. We start off informing, right? So in my English 111 classes, my students start off with an informative paper where we don't take a position. We just explain. That's what we're doing here in this first statement. So you can see with the student, she said, many supporters of creationism believe that it should be taught in American public school science class along with evolution. She's not saying that she agrees with them, but she's stating what other people believe in a general sense. So this tells us what this paragraph is about. If she had said, many people believe that it should be taught, that's vague. What specifically? Remember, every body paragraph should be taken out of the essay and read independently. That lets us know, does it make sense? Does it work? What are we talking about? So that is a statement of truth from the opposition. I'm going to highlight that in yellow so you can kind of see what this looks like. So we've got that there so far. Now, there's data from that perspective, and we can orient into that, and you can see what the student has done. She said, despite the evident lack of science within the belief, some argue that creationism still has a place in science class. One of the supporters of creationism in science classroom is the director of the Board of Education at Royal Society, Reverend Professor Michael Rice. And so what's nice is that we even get a credential of the person. We're not just going to go to some random person off the street, but we're going to try to find the best representative of that position to make us look as thoughtfully educated as possible on the topic. So Rice says that. So we name the person in full, and then we shift to last name. Quote, just because something lacks scientific support doesn't seem to me a sufficient reason to omit it from science lesson. There's much to be said for allowing students to raise as many doubts they have. Hardly a revolutionary idea in science teaching, and doing one's best to have a genuine discussion. He added that good teaching meant respecting students' views. I told the student, I believe, first we need a space here. It looks like Reese says that, and I think this was when it shifted authors in the article. I told my student, I think we should strike that out. Just like that. And then we've got a little bit of background and that piece of data to reinforce the point from an educator's perspective. Not everyone disagrees with the idea of the Bible or creationism specifically in a science classroom. And what's nice is you can actually even see that we've got an in-text citation here. Then we've got what we call the turn. And I'm going to make the turn we'll just make it in gray just so it's really easy to read. The rest of this perhaps looks like an argument against this. This seems to me to be a lightly supported refutation. So even when we write about the counterpoint, you can tell that in this case, at least, it's not even half the paragraph. We'd have the time to address the points that the people that disagreed with us made. So our writer said, the Rice has a point in respecting students' views. So that's a concession. We would need to do that. The lack of scientific support should be the factor in the omission of creationism in science classrooms. Such a comment invalidates the argument for the presence of creationism. Rice also adds that, and then we get one more interesting data point. So there's just a little bit of addressing of 2 different points. So you can see how, with what the student is doing here, is that we've got the point and the addressing it, the point, and then let's see where she goes with this. Rice also adds that excluding alternatives to scientific explanations for the origin of life in the universe from science lessons was counterproductive and would alienate some children from science altogether. The reason provided for the assumed counterproductiveness is that 1 in 10 students' background is that of creationist belief. And by teaching solely evolution in science classrooms, room is left to say that their beliefs are wrong. However, so it seems like this part right here is still the other position, and it's just a little bit of explaining it, unpacking it. I like this so far. We move back to that gray section right at the end where we get the addressing of it. You can see a signal with the word though and with the word however. In this case, the writer says, however, with this mindset, it can be said the school is not the place to invalidate students' upbringing, and it shifts the conversation to right and wrong, thus going off topic. Even though Rice made 2 very well thought out points, they're not stable enough arguments to support the reasoning for why creationism should be taught in American science classes. So this is a first draft, and you can tell it's kind of long. And if you've been taking my class for a while, you know how I'm not a big fan of overly long body paragraphs in undergraduate writing. I think students can manage it to, or can keep it to a manuscript page. But it would be interesting that an argument, I think the first one could be about the beliefs of it being useful. And then the second one, it could also be an argument for timeliness of teaching the science that we already know. It could be that a lot of this feels a little bit repetitive. I love the structure of this, but I do think that the student could also refute with, we just don't have the time to discuss every doubt that everybody has. I mean, think about how classroom times are pinched for SOLs and for teaching to the test and all of that based on required content that has to be delivered in the 180-day school year in a science classroom. So there's all sorts of ways to refute this and to bring in data to refute. That would be my recommendation for this author. Maybe I'd switch this part out in draft 2 to thinking about a way to refute through time. That these are beautiful ideas. And if school met year round, maybe there would be an opportunity or time for this. But other than a cursory discussion, there just isn't time in science class to discuss everybody's individual beliefs. And perhaps maybe even negotiating, so you could negotiate to make a recommendation for spaces where that would be functional. Maybe a cultural studies class, because religion is part of somebody's culture often. It isn't always, but it is often. So there are ways to negotiate towards some common ground, to refute, to say this doesn't really work because, or to concede sometimes under certain conditions we think they're right. I see opportunities with this topic for refutation or negotiation. I'm not sure with this topic. I see an opportunity to concede fully, at least. And I would, of course, make recommendations for the student to grow these refutations out if they're going to keep them as structured. But I thought this is a really good start, and I wanted to share with you how actual students imagine writing these papers and how they imagine addressing the concerns of opposing audiences. The Randerson article, I wanted to show you the in-text citation. It's from The Guardian, which is a newspaper. It's perfectly fine to use news information to find opposing viewpoints, especially if you can't find much in the academic literature. Remember, The Guardian is a green space in the media bias chart, so it's a good, trustworthy source to use, and this is an appropriate place for it to appear. So I will include the text, what I have on the screen in below the video, and if you have any questions, by all means, reach out and let me know.